Hey everybody, Lawrence here, Friendly Basement Grognard and Dirty Basement 3, coming at you with another one. Now, about a year or so ago, maybe two, I don't know, I made these monster mushrooms. I had a blast making them. My players hated them, but eventually I did send them up to Canada to the Dungeon Master to help out with his, I think it was the initial Claricon that I sent him up for. But apparently they were a big hit, and apparently the Dungeon Master still has like one or two of them on his on his shelves. But since then, I've gone on and made other bunch of other things and monsters and whatnot. But I kept thinking, it's like, man, I'd really like to make make monster mushrooms again. I was like, yeah, you know what? I think I will. But I didn't want to make them exactly the same. So I want to show you the process of how I remade or made a different version monster mushrooms. Now, these were started off with the same base mushrooms, but that was pretty well much it. And a lot of the techniques are different and different things I've learned since I made the first one. So I want to walk you through the process of how I made these. But before we do, I want to give a big shout out to my patrons: Dungeon Matron, Corel, Mia Geeked, Sykes, and Rick Spotton. Your guys' help every month is greatly appreciated and makes doing this a lot easier for me. And also, I want to give a big shout out to Steve over at Earthman Brick, link to his channel down below, for making the thumbnail for this video. I gave him a picture. I said, you have complete creative control. Do what you want. And this is what he made for me. So thank you, Steve, for the awesome thumbnail. All right, let's get to it. Okay, as you can see here, I've got some square blocks of foam I'm going to use for mounds on top of the bases. But I don't want any overhang, so I'm just measuring out with the base here and then cutting off all the excess and creating a bunch of blanks for later. Of course, these mushrooms have like a rounded bottom, and just so for ease of use later, I'm cutting a flat bottom on it, so I don't have to fight with it later on. Of course, now I want to actually start shaping the mounds that these mushrooms are going to sit on. So I'll trace the bottom of the mushroom where it sits, and then just start carving away and getting the basic shape of each mound until I'm happy with how it looks. I take small bits away, and yeah, it makes a mess, but you know what? It's better off to take small amounts that way, because once you take it off, it's a pain in the butt to get back on. So like I said, I'm just keep shaping away until I'm happy with how it winds up and looks. Now, rather than sand these smooth, I'm going to use a little technique. Use a lighter, just quickly pass the flame over. It's not really creating any smoke, but it's just like melting it just enough to get rid of all the little sharp edges and stuff from the cutting. And actually, it gives it a hard shell, so there's the advantage of that too. Plus, I don't have to deal with any dust this way, but I do have a fan going just in case, to keep the smoke away. Now that I've got these all smoothed down and shaped to where I want, it's just a simple matter of I'm using tacky glue for this because the bases are wooden, so it's going to dry and stick. Though, if you want, you can use hot glue. I sometimes do that, but today I'm just using tacky. Now I want to start mixing up some Milliput for some sculpting. Yes, I know that's a row of green stuff sitting right there, but I'm actually mixing 2 equal parts of Milliput, the 2 different parts of Milliput, and just kind of mixing, twisting, and just getting it so it's a nice even mixture. I will be adding some green stuff in a little bit, and you'll see, but this can be a little bit mind-numbing and boring. Yes, I know I should wear gloves for this, but I'm not. But, okay, now that I got all the Milliput mixed to where I want it, I'm going to mix up a little bit of green stuff. This is a fresh roll, so I really don't have that problem with it, like where the blue and the green touch getting hard, so I'm just mixing it straight up. And again, the same as the Milliput, just keep twisting and turning and rolling it until you get a nice even coat. Now that I got there, I'm going to take both the milliput and the green stuff and then blend them together until I get a nice even mixture. There are some advantages to doing this. It actually makes it easier to work with the milliput when you add a little green stuff. At least I find. But now I'm just pinching little balls off and grabbing all my different sculpting tools. And I'm trying to blend that little ball evenly into the cap of the mushroom. And now I'm actually kind of carving a little hole in the middle, kind of make it look like a burst pustule or something. I don't know. I was just going for something gross. So, and of course now, just using a flat edge and carving some texture lines into it. Just going for that little bit of grossness, Now that all the little pustule things are done, I'm grabbing my homemade texture paste, and I want to, give it a little bumps and different crevices on top, in between all the little pustules. Some texture. I'm using the texture paste to put some texture on top of the cap. Now I'm going relatively thin because I don't want like a deep, thick layer. I just need like a little bit of, almost like a sandy layer. And just brushing it all over. And here you can see the final result. Quick, easy, done. Now, the stems of these mushrooms are relatively smooth, so I want to actually carve some texture lines into it. And it's pretty quick and easy. It's just a matter of grabbing a flat sculpting tool and then just running lines down through it. Now, I'm not doing like all one continuous lines. I'm doing continuous lines, short lines, just varying it up just so it's not like one straight lines up and down all the time. But there you go. As I was staring at these, I wasn't happy. I was like, those mounds are too tall. So I decided to just pop them all off and then cut them in half and reshape them or do whatever I want with them. And I was just like, that's just too tall. Cut in half. That's perfect. Just how I want. So easy peasy. And now, of course, I popped them all off. I got to re-glue them. Same process. Just brush on some tacky glue and then slap them back down. Now, as the same as before with the previous monster mushrooms, I got to give these things mouths. Come on. So I'm just using a Sharpie and drawing out a pattern as a guide to cut out. And then I'm using my X-Acto knife here and just cutting away, going along with the pattern that I just drew for the mouth, and plunging it deep into the foam so I actually get like a little cavity for the mouth. It's relatively simple and easy, and once I actually get it cut, I can pop it out, or dig it out if you have to. But and a mouth. Now, unlike the previous monster mushrooms, I want these to have eyes. So I'm using these hemispherical stickers and for the bases of the eye. But not just one, two, but I'm giving these things three eyes, and the eyes actually go around, so my thought was that nothing can sneak up on them because it can see in all directions, so bye-bye sneak attacks for you rogues. And here I'm just using some straight-up milliput because I don't want it just to be the stickers for the eyes, so, I have to do some bottom and top eyelids. Sort of, I guess that's what you can call it. But I'm just putting a small amount, and then I'm going to, feather and blend it into the stem as much as possible so it doesn't look like an obvious, eye that's sticking right there. Because, got to make it sneaky so when the adventurers come up to it, it doesn't look like a mushroom with eyes. And, of course, once I get all the blending done, I want it to look as much as part of the stem as possible, so I'm going to carve in a bunch of lines that sort of match the rest of the stem. And of course here I have another mixture of the milliput and green stuff, and I want to make some tentacles that are actually going to be laying down on the base, and I'm using this roller maker from Green Stuff World just so put in some texture into these, roots real quick, and then just lay them down in place, and then where it attaches to the stem of the mushroom, just blend it in. Yeah, that does lose some of the texture, so I'll use the flat end just to carve the pattern back in. And it works really well. And of course, I want to have tentacles that are sticking up and going in all different crazy positions and whatnot. So for that, I'm going to actually be using just straight up green stuff because green stuff is stronger than just the Milliput. So for this, gonna go with the green stuff. And as you can see, I've already done a couple, but it's just a matter of rolling it out to the ballpark thickness that I want. And again, I'm going to be using the texture roller thing Bob from Green Stuff World. And then I'm going to leave it in different weird positions just so it's kind of crazy. And you can see I did a big pile of them. And with my X-Acto knife here, I'm just kind of like drilling holes in, put a little dab of hot glue, and stick one of the tentacles in, rinse and repeat. And there you go. I have 3 tentacles laying down, 3 tentacles sticking up. So it looks cool. I'm going back to all the ground areas and the flat areas of the base and the mounds. I'm going to be getting a decent coat because this is ground texture, so I kind of want it to be a lot more bumpy and different and whatnot on this. And this also will give it the foam parts that it's covering a nice hard protective coating. Not that it really needs it, but that's what I'm telling myself. But no, quick, easy, done. But now for the mouth, I'm using a toothpick to punch holes in for where the teeth are going to go. And the teeth are actually just cut off tips, sharp points of the toothpicks. And I'm using some pliers, dipping it in some glue, and then just jamming it into where the hole that I put in is. It's a bit of a process, but it's relatively easy. Now that I've got everything done, it's time to start painting this sucker up. I'm just using some straight up air black from Vallejo and just painting this black. You can brush it on. I have the airbrush, so that's just what I'm doing. There's nothing really. It just makes it easier for me to get in all the crooks and crannies, especially inside of that mouth. Ooh, that would have been a nightmare with a brush, but yeah. Now, I did do a gray zenithal, and I forgot to film it. But right now, I'm just giving a white dry brush, getting all the highlights, and just make everything pop and make it look pretty. But again, black, gray zenithal, and then white dry brush. Because some of this is going to be kind of pseudo slap chop, so it's a force of habit for me to do this anymore, like this anymore. Here I'm using some khaki and some kind of green, I don't remember, basically to make a baby poop green. And that's the color I'm going to paint the caps with. Now, this paint I'd added some water to thin it up, and I put a few drops of some Jet Dry just to make it flow better, almost like a wash, but really, really thick, really thick wash. And of course, I'm using the khaki color for the stems and for the roots and tentacles. So and I'd also watered that down and added some Jet Dry to it. Crap paint can be hit or miss as far as thickness goes. I've started adding water to it and then a little bit of Jet Dry just to make it flow better and get in all those cracks and crevices. If I'm going for 100% coverage like I am right now. But again, the stem, the tentacles, roots, whatever you want to call them, but that's the color I'm going with. Now, for all the little pustules up there, I'm actually using a Vallejo Express Color Zombie Flesh. I mean, it's a green, but kind of a rotted, nasty looking green. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want. It does actually dry lighter than what it is when it's wet. That's why I like using those caps, so I know exactly what I'm getting. It's like most paints. They're darker, so of course everything's a little too bright. I don't know. I'm using my homemade dark brown wash and just basically slathering all over the stem here, just to get in all those cracks and crevices and just to show off all the work that I had done, really. And just so it doesn't look like a big brown, well, turd with a green cap. Now, the caps, I wasn't too happy with the green color, so I decided to darken it down quite a bit. And I'm using Wash by Citadel Agrax Earthshade. It's basically a dark brown wash. I didn't want to go with my homemade stuff, and for some, I knew exactly, because I wasn't 100% sure how my homemade stuff would work, but I knew exactly how this would work. So this is what I choose. Though normally I don't use like the store bought washes and stuff for terrain and stuff like that because cost wise. But this is one of those rare exceptions where I needed to know exactly what would happen and what it would look like, so I went with it. And I still wasn't happy with how the stems and the tentacles were looking, so I went and used the Agrax Earthshade on the tentacles and the stem as well. Again, it was a matter of I knew exactly what it was going to look like, so that's why I went with it. Even though it's a little more costly than I like to do, but it worked. Now that the caps are green or dry, I'm using this Spanish olive, and it's a light green, and just giving a quick light dry brush just to make all that texture pop and make it look pretty, because we know I like pretty. But no, like I said, just a quick dry brush, really light, not too heavy handed, and just to make things really pop again. And now I'm using the khaki, I think. Yeah, the khaki. And I'm going to be giving the stems and the tentacles a real quick light dry brush with them. Just to make everything, again, the same as with the caps, just to make everything pop and to show off all the texture and all the work that was done. And here I'm using some, what color am I using? Oh yeah, some antique parchment, which is basically an off-white, and I'm painting all the eyes. For these eyes, I wanted them to have like a white milky appearance, not like true eyeballs, if that makes any sense. Almost like they're blind, but they can still see motion and whatnot. And while I was doing it, I was like, well, I might as well get the teeth while I got the white out. So there you go. And here I'm using some Seraphim Sepia that I want to use on the teeth just to give it a little like kind of plant, more not like stark white, but more plant like kind of nastiness, dirty teeth. And I'm mainly applying it to the bases of the teeth. And of course, I want to start painting all the dirt areas. I'm going to be using a dark brown as my base coat. I'm trying to go for 100% coverage as much as possible. It is slightly watered down, so it's not. I'm using a watered down burnt umber, just so it flows a little bit better. Because again, it's crap paint. It's thick as well, very thick. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but base coat. And of course, I'm using a mid-tone brown for me and nutmeg brown just to give all the dirt areas an overbrush. And going for like 75% coverage maybe. Just letting all the the recesses and cracks and crevices, leaving those alone. And giving it a quick overbrush.
And of course, a light brown or a tan, in this case, light mocha. And gonna give a quick dry brush to hit all the high points of all the dirt textures and whatnot, just to show it off and make it pop and look pretty. Again, I know I keep saying it, but I like pretty. Maybe a second twist. Hey, second twisted discussing can be pretty. It all depends on how you look at it. Of course, now I'm going to start putting on some flocking. I'm using a watered down 50/50 of PVA, regular PVA and water, and just brushing it on all the areas I want flocking to go, mainly for like flat spots and areas that I think could use it. And just, basically, like I said, just quick brushing on, and I'm using my go-to colors. These are all Woodland Scenics fine turf, a earth, a burnt grass, and a yellow for highlight. And unlike some people, I just like to sprinkle it on because I can control where each individual color goes. That's just my preferred method. But then, boom, done. And all the excess that I tapped off, I save for when I make moss in the future. Of course, now I want to add some grass tufts. My favorite go-to brand, Huge Miniatures, is what I'm mainly using here. Just take grass tuft, dip it in some Aley's tacky glue, and then you can use regular PVA if you want, and just stick them on anywhere that I think could use it or needs it, or just to break up the monotony of the base a little bit, just to give a little extra something, you know. Now it's time for the cool part. I'm adding some isopropyl alcohol into a cup, and I'm going to add some drops of lime green acrylic ink and one drop of burnt umber ink, just to tone it down a little bit. Give it a thorough mixing to the point where it's ready to go. And I'm shooting in some 5-minute epoxy. It can be a pain in the butt to get in, but it works. And then I'm going to thoroughly stir this up. Stir, 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 stir. Now, the reason I added the alcohol to it, it'll make the 5-minute epoxy flow a lot better. And it will give you roughly 8 to 10 minutes of work time instead of just the 5. Now, you'll see but you still have a very limited amount of time to work, so you got to move. But since it flows so much better, I can apply all this with a little pipette dropper that I'm using. And though it's still going to harden up like the 5-minute epoxy will, but again, you have a very limited amount of time, so there's no like putzing around. You got to move. I mean, I did this whole entire process in roughly 8 minutes. Even though this is sped up, but of course, you got to have some slime and stuff coming out of the mouth. So, of course, I'm going to add that in. And that pipette thing makes it easy to get in between all this teeth I put in. Oh man! And the thing is, once this stuff starts to harden up, it's like bam, it's hard. There's no in between. It's like pure workable liquid, and then a really hard, unusable crud. But again, thanks to the little pipette thing I got here, it makes putting it on these little specific spots really easy. I like using this stuff because it's great. Now, doing for small puddles, slimes, stuff like this. Now, for like big, like ponds and stuff, I'm going to use other products that wind up looking the same. But for this is perfect. 5-minute epoxy, quick work, and it looks good. Just add the alcohol and it'll flow just like, well, it flows about as well as I would say school glue. That watered down PVA school glue that flows relatively quick. While this is workable, that's about how well it flows once you add the alcohol. Now, I added 99% alcohol because that's what I have for my 3D printer, but the 70% alcohol will give you the same effect if that's what you have. So go ahead and use it. But again, just using that pipette to and you don't wind up not putting too much, not too little. With the control that that thing gives you, it's perfect. Of course, last step. I have these little 3D printed rats that I painted up that I have just ready to go for whenever I want to use it. I was like, let's put a bunch of rats all over these bases for no other reason than because I want to. So I'm just super gluing a bunch of rats to all the bases, real quick and easy. Because I like rats. They make good pets. And these turned out really well. I'm so happy with how they look, especially all the little pustules on top with all that slime or maybe acid oozing out, and the little rats running around the base. I couldn't be happier with how these turned out. Creepy, disgusting, and not better, but definitely a different way of doing the monster mushrooms than I did before. So I am really happy with them. Just as happy as I am with the previous ones.
Hey everybody, if you made it this far, it means you watch to the end. As always, I can't thank you enough. Hey, if you liked the video, hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more, click subscribe down below or over there. If you want to get a hold of me directly, there's a link to the Discord down in the description. Come to the Discord. Post pictures of creepy crawlies that you make. I'd love to see them. But anyway, I really enjoyed making these. These were fun. It was kind of nice to revisit something I'd done before and then put a new twist on it, and I think I accomplished that. And I have a feeling that these are going to be terrorizing the Honeywood crew up north soon, before too long. But again, guys, as always, when you're making your terrain, your monsters, painting your miniatures, whatever you're doing, remember, the only person you got to worry about is you. Maybe a mushroom, because it's your terrain.